Well, welcome everybody. I'm Rich Foster, Chair of the Needham Housing Authority, and this is a special meeting of the Board of Commissioners on Monday, October 28th, 2024. And we are having this meeting on a completely virtual basis as permitted by Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022 as extended by Governor Healy to March 31st, 2025. And I'm going to begin by calling the roll. The commissioners, Reg Foster is here.
Jim Flanagan is here.
Ed Scheidler is here.
Penny Kirk is here.
Janice Bennett is here.
Great. And I just wanted to note for the record that public notice of this meeting was posted last Thursday or Friday, setting forth the date and time and place of the meeting with the town clerk. Okay, we'll jump right into the meeting. There are no walk-on chair announcements here, with one exception, which is we did reach approval by the Conservation Commission of the Linden Street redevelopment project, and they are issuing a notice. An order of conditions is what they do. So that's wrapped up. We did get the final approvals from both DPW and the fire chief for some tweaks that they asked for a couple, 3 weeks ago. And tomorrow evening is the next, and I think final planning board meeting at 7 o'clock. We're first up on the agenda where they will formally receive those reports, and they were all thumbs up support of the project. And then vote to close the public hearing and move on to considering the draft order has been worked on in parallel by Alex Klee, the Assistant Planning Director. And with any luck, we should be finished with that and ready to move to the next fire drill, which is to in the next 2 or 3 weeks to submit a preliminary application to the state for the nearly $50 million worth of funding we need to proceed with the Phase 1A of the Linden Street redevelopment project. So, keep your fingers crossed, and we're on track. And our new development partners, Peabody Properties and AHSC, continue to really be burning the midnight oil and hitting the ground running, whatever other metaphor we want to say about really taking the baton handoff and running to the next sprint of the relay race or marathon here. So all right, with that, we have 3 or 4 or 5 agenda items that need to be approved before the end of the month. And the first one, in no particular order, is the CPA funding application for High Rock Estates Affordable Housing Land Use Study. And just to repeat what I said at our board meeting last week, this with the handoff of the Linden Street redevelopment project to HSC Peabody, we will have some capacity by this when we reach this time next year to start formally considering what we should be doing about the High Rock Estates redevelopment. And we all know that that's our oldest property and most in need of updating or redevelopment. It's a 25 acre plus or minus piece of land in the High Rock neighborhood. 2 decades ago, the right answer to doing something about those old bungalows was to redevelop each individual lot into a duplex, which became High Rock Homes. And so 20 units that were worn out became 40 family units, both 2 and 3 bedroom units, and half of which are ownership and half of which are a rental. And in going forward with the High Rock project, we have done an existing conditions study that was financed by town CPA funds, and which confirms that they really are tear downs. There's nothing you could do to kind of fix them up to modern standards, and confirmed with our work with the Cambridge Housing Authority that when we get around to doing repositioning with High Rock Estates, which is not what we're going to be doing today, there will be the same sort of new revenue stream that will support replacing those units, existing units, and adding more units. The big question is, what is the right kind of project to do on that 25 acres? If you think about it, what was the right answer 2 decades ago might not be the right answer today, because we're in the middle of a much more significant shortage of affordable housing at all levels, not only deeply affordable housing, but just workforce affordable housing. And it may be that doing triplexes is the right idea. It might be doing something other than that. And of course, we're going to have to get this town lined up and supportive, and the neighborhood lined up and supportive of whatever we do there. And of course, our residents who live there, who have homes there, lined up and supportive about whatever that is going to be. And, phasing and funding, maybe there's mixed income, maybe there's some market rate units in there as well as deeply affordable units. We just don't know. So the idea is to have some money this time next year, which is how long it will take to get through the CPA funding process, which ultimately is approved by spring, May 2025 town meeting, should it be approved, and is available in the third quarter. It may be we will be in a position of trying to figure out what it is, and figure it out, I think, in collaboration with the town, that we should be doing with that property. And so that's the purpose of this CPA funding request, and everybody's had a chance to look at it in their board packet a week ago, and the most recent one for the special board meeting. Are there any comments or questions or thoughts that anybody has on the board?
Reg, I'm in full support of it. I think it's a great opportunity to explore with the community how to optimize, what is a significant parcel of land. Thanks.
Okay.
I like the idea about the triplexes. Just because of the housing shortage, and it's really not going to get any better. Probably gonna
Definitely.
get worse.
Definitely. Okay, well, if there's no further discussion, I will make a motion that the Needham Housing Authority Board of Commissioners approve the submission of the draft application that you have in your packet, in substantially the same form. Do I have a second? I mean.
Second.
Second by Janice. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Reg Foster votes yes.
Jim Flanagan votes yes.
Ed Scheidler votes yes.
Annie Kirk votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
Okay, it passes unanimously 5-0. The second agenda item we have, or it's agenda item number 3, is to review and approve the submission of a RAD Section 18 blend repositioning application. We went through the reasoning for this again at the previous board meeting, but we did need to have our final tenant meeting, which happened, when was that, Cheryl? Last Thursday, I think.
Thursday, that's
Yep.
correct.
And that went well. There were more Q&A that was.
I'm sorry, Brent, it was actually last Monday.
Last Monday. Time flies. And there was more Q&A, and that's actually being documented, and that goes in with the application. Meanwhile, we have Chris Moyer here as an attendee, if we need to ask him any questions. And Cheryl, you might want to activate his speaking here. And as summarized very nicely in a long memo, decision memorandum that we've all received now twice in our board packet, we would revert to the strategy we were approving at this time last year, because the one that we changed to was discontinued by HUD. And this sort of lays out the benefits of doing this. And this is where the funding is going to come from for doing the Seabeds and Cook modernization project, preservation and modernization project, which is now weighing in to be somewhere between $23 million and $28 million worth of renovations and modernization of our two youngest facilities, I guess, not counting High Rock Estates, but they're 40 years old. And if we make this investment in these properties, we can, and which we can afford by approving this repositioning application, we'll, pretty much ensure that both, properties continue forward for the next 40 plus or minus years. And I think that's a huge win for Needham and for the Housing Authority. Any comments or questions on that?
I'll throw a question out there, Reg, just especially for anyone watching. I just want to confirm, from all that I've seen, this appears to be the only viable path to getting significant, to be able to get access, to get the revenue, to get the mortgages, to get access to significant funding, especially since the Section 22 option has been removed. Is that true?
That is true. It's not the only one. You could do just a straight RAD conversion, but
Okay.
it wouldn't be nearly as lucrative or beneficial in terms of increasing the subsidy. And we did study all that a couple, 3 years ago before, Jim, you came on board. So we compared all the different options. And at the time, a year ago, clearly this RAD Section 18 blend option, which takes the better parts of both programs and combines them together, is the best option. And according to the email, the decision memorandum you have, will bring in about $1.5 million more per year than we get today for for these properties. And it will also liberate 68 Faircloth units, which will be no longer needed because we'd be moving over to the Section 8 program. And that is going to go right back to work for the town of Needham for Housing Authority. And the Linden Street project is part of 68 subsidies that we'll be using over there to make those project numbers, that project pro forma economics work. So just not only is there no other way for this brand, but there's no other way for the Linden Street project to go forward either. So, it's a very good deal, and it's been used for years, and we've been promised expedited review and approval of our reapplication by HUD. We'll see if that actually happens or not. But by doing this, it also doesn't slow down our progress on Seabeds and Cook, because we've just finished the 100% schematic design. We're now doing value engineering, and then we will be moving into the next phases of the project once this vote is taken, and once we get we can count on having the new funding come in.
Right on. So better for the current tenants, better for the properties long-term, and better for NHA operations.
And better for Linden Chambers. For Linden Street.
Right, and the whole, yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board members?
I just can't wait to get it started.
We'll have you on tape when we have to ask you to move out for a few days and you're complaining about it. I mean, it's going to be a bit of a pain, but it's definitely an investment we need to do here. So, okay, I'm going to I have a motion to read at the end of this thing, which, this is going to be typed up and sent in with the application that has to go in before November 1st. I make the motion that the Board of Commissioners of the Needham Housing Authority certifies its approval for the NHA Executive Director to submit an application to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, to convert all 76 existing federally assisted public housing units at Sid Beds Way and Captain Robert Cook Drive to project-based voucher housing utilizing HUD's rental assistance demonstration, aka RAD, and Section 18 blend programs. Pursuant to this memorandum that you've received from the Cambridge Housing Authority to the Needham Housing Authority, dated October 11th, 2024, as amended and revised October 21, 2024. That's the motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Janice again. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll again. Reg Foster votes aye.
Jim Flanagan votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny Kirk votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
Great. Okay. We move on to agenda item number 4, a small amendment that needs to be made to the fiscal year 2024 state budget. And maybe turn the floor over to you, Cheryl, so you can explain what this is about. And I will
Okay, thank you, Reg.
pull the screen share up here while you're doing that here.
Yeah. So this budget revision really is relative to our maintenance salary line item. In the past, we've always given our maintenance staff an increase based on the Department of Labor and Industries. This year, 2025, rather, going forward, we are going to be able to include a salary increase for them via our budget schedule. At a minimum, we have to do labor and industry, but we can do more than that via our budget. So what you have in front of you, I think it's on page 3, is the page 2, the maintenance is the maintenance schedule, salary schedule. I sent you an email probably 10 minutes ago based on the conversation that Rick and I were having about the salary increases, and it sort of outlines the changes to the salary budget line item, which includes the 5% increase for the Director of Maintenance and Facilities. The foreman rate was adjusted from 38.2 to 38.62, and that's also based on labor and industry as of April 1st, 2024. Mechanic laborer was adjusted because that gentleman was in there as a trainee, and he's not a trainee, he is a mechanic laborer. So in the labor and industry salary for that line item, it was increased from 3156 to 3217. And again, he's in the right category he should be in. He's not a trainee, he's been with us for more than a year, and he is in that correct category, along with the other mechanic labor staff member who was a trainee 2 years ago, but is no longer a trainee. So those were moved into the category that they should be in. Another mechanic laborer was moved to mechanic carpenter because that's exactly what he is, and he has his license, etc. So the rate increase for him this year was based on that category of mechanic carpenter, and it went from 3156 to 3606. Repeating what I just said about mechanic laborer, went from laborer to mechanic, went from laborer trainee to mechanic laborer. And his increase went from, as a trainee, 2619 to 3217. So, and then there was an overtime, in the overtime for our maintenance staff went from 32K to 40K. And I think that's about it. Reg, do you need me to do something?
No, I'm okay. My program crashed, so I didn't put the
Oh,
document up here, so. But anyway, let's open it up to any questions by anybody.
Were those hourly rates? Oh, sorry.
yes, hourly rates based on the Department of Labor and Industry. Just, you know, that's what maintenance staff received, you know, across the Commonwealth based on those rates. And our guys weren't properly categorized, you know, based on their skill. So their increase was based on their category, the category that they should be in. And Rick had pointed out that this will be easier for us when we go forward as we begin our budget deliberations to determine what the salary increase for this staff will be. Whereas before, and this will be the first time the Housing Authority's ever done that. They've never been included in our budget discussion in terms of salaries.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes,
Go ahead, Ed.
considering the cost of living in the living in the Boston area, it doesn't seem like we're paying our people an awful lot of money.
No,
We certainly want to support this.
yes, sir. And that was the issue. You know, as I mentioned in a previous meeting that I had went to Temple Beth Shalom to advocate for an increase in the governor's line item for maintenance because our staff are paid so low. I was so disappointed at the rate that we could give them, and they got the highest rate at the rate per labor and industry. So it was very disappointing to me. And I said that in a public meeting because, you know, these gentlemen they're on the front lines. They deal with a lot more than we even can imagine what they deal with. And our guys are very, you know, deserving of a sustainable increase. So you're right, Commissioner Scheidler, they are very low.
But in building on that, am I right that we're taking it up to the max that the state will allow us to, or near max, right? It's not as if we have greater opportunity to raise that to a more competitive rate.
There is a percentage that we can raise our salaries to, and that will be part of those discussions when we have them.
So
I think the percentage is 9% that we can.
We're making a concerted effort within some real constraints. Back to Ed's point of it is
Not sustainable. Yeah. They all have families, little children. Anyway, they're a great group of guys. You know, my involvement through the years with the agency, you know, I really like this cohort of maintenance gentlemen. They're very professional, and recommendations are always made to me. They're not trying to save a penny here and there. They're doing things in a real humane way, and I really appreciate that.
Any other questions? I finally got my program to reboot itself here, my PDF program. And I'm just going to show you here when I can get the screen share going what you're voting on, because you know, it's what we got from Rick is not a thing of beauty, but it does have the information in it here. So let me just share the screen here. share. So is that big enough for everybody to see?
No,
No,
Make it a little bit bigger so we can
We
read
make
the
it bigger.
classifications.
Um, How about that? That big enough?
yeah,
Okay, great. So if you look in your board packet, you'll see that there's three numbered with pen and ink numbered pages, 1, 2, 3 on this. And this is the next one after that, which is sort of the line item budget request. Does everybody see what I'm referring to here in your board packet? And so if you look at this, this column here, it has two columns. It has the current approved budget column here, and then it has what we're requesting here. And then two columns. One is the per unit per month amount, and then the total amount here in the second line, the request per unit per month and the amount we're being requested. So if you scroll down to line 37, you'll see line 37, accounting code 4410, maintenance labor. That's going from $114,631 to $123,544. That's really the only change for voting on here. And then the rest of the changes are totals or subtotals. Line 40 changes, which is total maintenance line. Line 57 changes, which is total expenses line. And line 58, net income line, and line 62, which just reflects that increase of budgetary amount. So any further questions from anybody? Okay, I will make a motion that we approve this budgetary change and for the executive director to send it in after this meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Scheidler. Hearing no further discussion, I'll call the roll. Reg Foster votes aye.
Jim Flanagan votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny Kirk votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
Great. All right, we're on the next and final agenda item, Executive Director Employment Contract Renewal. As I mentioned at our board meeting a week or so ago, just before that board meeting, I got a notice saying, we've decided to have a November 1st deadline for renewing all executive director contracts that need to be renewed. Here's a complete packet of regulations, PHN, public notices, and salary worksheets and so forth. And so we had been planning to do this later in the year, which is what we would normally do, more like in December. But they're asking for us to get it in by November 1st. Last Thursday or Friday, I sent around sort of all the notices, a draft contract that's filled out, and when I went through it, 3 of the 5 board members here, I guess, have been through this before, or 4 out of the 5 board members. So Jim, you're the new kid on the block here, and not much has changed since we did this 20 months ago for Cheryl when she was brought on board as executive director. The changes that have happened is that the salary caps that they impose on us have gone up. And so that's, one factor that we have some control over. And then another factor is that now that Cheryl has a year under her belt, actually 21 months under her belt as an executive director, we can have the discretion of renewing her for 1, 2, or 3 years, or conceivably for 4 or 5 years. When I went back and looking at the fine print this morning, There's a provision that said we could do it for 4 or 5 years. And other than that, the contract form is very standard. We're not 100% required to use DHCD's standard form. We can use some form of our own, but we've always used the now EOHLC standard form because it gets processed much more expeditiously than trying to strike off on our own. Maybe they do that for the Boston Housing Authority. I don't know, but we've never done that here at Needham. I'm going to maybe turn it over to you, Jim, for any questions or comments you might have, since you're like I said, the new to this process here.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. Comment would be that I support it.
Okay, great. And the other commissioners?
I have no questions.
We're discussing now the contract renewal.
Yes.
Yeah, I have something I'd like to read.
Sure.
Okay, this is first from the open meeting law brochure. To discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health, rather than professional competence of an individual, it must be done in a executive session, but professional competence is to be done in an open meeting. So what I'd like to read: when the executive director position opened with the end of the interim ED's contract, I supported our current ED for the position, thinking she would have respect for the residents and staff that the prior executive director did not.
Sorry.
After the pandemic, a group of qualified volunteers set out to resupply and set up the physical surroundings for the after-school program. When they finished that project, they then suggested that their expert qualifications were available to help establish goals and suggested ways to achieve them. The interim executive director rejected their offer, and he said that it was time for the professionals to take over. That, as we recall, was a total disaster regarding the goals that had made the program such a spectacular success before the pandemic. That disaster continued after our current executive director was elected to the office. I met with the current ED that I had been confident would have respect for the residents and suggested a way to salvage the after-school program. I was informed that my suggestion was not welcome and that I was not an employee of the Needham Housing Authority. Prior to the pandemic, the then resident services coordinator raised money through nonprofit organization grants and donations from local businesses, primarily for the benefit of the after-school program, as well as to provide entertainment programs for the older population. After the pandemic, the current services coordinator did not resume soliciting donations for the benefit of the after-school program, nor the entertainment programs for the older population of residents. The original program services coordinator, now a commissioner, resumed the volunteer effort to raise contributions to fund the two efforts. The efforts have evolved primarily into programs for the entertainment of the residents. The commissioner has told me that she generally has an idea of the programs that she would like to present based on conversations with residents and past experience developing programs for other audiences. Recently, the commissioner requested a balance of unspent money from the executive director, needing to know who and how many programs she could pursue. I would like to read you a quote of the email response that was sent to the commissioner in response to the request for the balance of funds. This is the response. I pointed out at the meeting that when the Needham Housing Authority receives a donation from an organization that you have reached out to in terms of soliciting a donation on behalf of the authority, that it is not appropriate for you to have an expectation of how that donation will be handled. As indicated in the ED's last review, there appears to be an inability to delegate responsibility, which has been acknowledged. I have heard from residents that the morale in the office is at a very low point, and there appears to be a very low level of trust in the ED's management style. I am also told there are residents that are afraid to go into the office. I generally take those statements with a grain of salt until something more concrete is demonstrated. The executive director has spent over $38,000 on administrative consultants. This is okay if it has resulted in more professional results. But it seems that additional money would be well spent on hiring a consultant that would be helpful for the executive director to develop the confidence to be able to delegate responsibility and generate trust with the staff. That might prevent the executive director from making herself sick, resulting from the excessive number of hours that she works. I am the only one who can fix it. That is the statement from our former president, Donald J. Trump. I am the only one who can make decisions seems to be the attitude of the executive director, with her suggestion that I'm not an employee of the Needham Housing Authority, and the scolding of our commissioner that she should not have any expectation how the donation she obtained should be handled. We're now being asked to authorize a pay increase and to renew the employment contract of our executive director. Based on the information above, I'm tempted to move that we not renew the contract of our executive director. However, with the extensive effort of our board chair, the PRI has progressed to the point I do not want to cause any interruption in that process. I do feel that no pay increase should be authorized and that the employment contract should be renewed for 1 year. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments, Penny?
Well, I have let Cheryl know that I'm withdrawing from the activity of raising funds. There's just too much incompatibility here. And it can go to Lori or whoever, or maybe it won't take place, but I'm withdrawing.
So I was asking comments directed at the employment contract agenda item we have now. Obviously, we don't have an agenda item to discuss most of what Ed said, but it was relevant to Ed's reasoning why he was making his recommendation on the employment contract or making his point of view known. So I'm just asking you, Penny, on the employment contract, do you have anything?
Nothing to add, although I think Ed is willing to have everybody have a copy of what he's said.
You could feel free to email it out, Ed, to everybody now that you brought it up, obviously, in the public meeting here. So please do go ahead and do that. Janice, any comments or thoughts?
No.
Okay. Jim.
Oh, I appreciate larger organizations have challenges. I'm learning some of them along the way, and appreciate you sharing that. With regard to program services, and especially the after-school part, I'm interested in looking at that more broadly, given all the changes that have happened in student behaviors and demographics and our population and school services. And we'll be doing that over the next year. Yeah, I appreciate the feedback. And I still support the increase and 3-year extension.
I'll offer my own comments from.
Oh, can I comment? I
Sure,
changed.
go ahead. Go ahead, Janice.
I had made a suggestion that it may be a good idea for Penny and Jim to work together on the after-school program, considering their considerable amount of experience. And I think it might settle things down a little bit. So that's all.
Well, Jim, I think you've already offered to assist us to kind of look at and, holistically from your fresh point of view and your professional experiences, what we're going forward with and why things are not working with now. You have, right? Volunteered to do that?
Yes, in an inclusive manner, to your point, Janice. Thank you. Yeah.
I mean, the one thing is both of them being board members, really Jim has to limit his work, outside of board meetings to just Penny. But if that's okay with both Penny and Jim, I think that certainly sounds like a good suggestion, Janice.
Yes.
Anything else, Janice?
No,
Okay. So, my point of view, just getting back to the employment contract, is I know this has been a bit of a bone of contention that predates Cheryl. And it's just one of the many, many, many things that she does. And I do feel in the last 20 months that she has grown tremendously in her ability to juggle the three-ring circus that is, the position of being an executive director for a complicated, smallish housing authority like us. And I've worked with her nearly, I think, just about every day, on one crisis du jour or another. And I've come to know her a heck of a lot better than I did, a decade ago when she left the Board of Commissioners. And I had concerns 2 years ago that we needed somebody who, with the complexities of the things that we had lying ahead, that had been an executive director before, but there wasn't anybody that was available, number one. And number two, even though on paper, Cheryl's background wasn't, sort of your typical path to executive director, she brought an enormous amount of strengths to the table, especially, similar to what Ed said, summarized in his statement here. And I was worried, and my expectations have been quite exceeded, given the breadth and width of the juggling act, particularly being, a few heartbeats away from actually getting the Linden Street project funding application submitted. And that doesn't happen. All of our executive directors before then didn't want to go down this path because it's so much work on top of all, the day-to-day complexities and challenges here. So I think, Cheryl, in my view, we're not doing a personnel evaluation today or performance evaluation. We do that in December. Normally, that's why we would do the contract before we got to, in a couple of months, not now, but unfortunately we have this deadline. But I have been not just pleasantly surprised, but quite impressed at her ability to rise to the occasion, which is not to say she's perfect, nor any more than I'm perfect or anybody else on this call is perfect, but particularly her commitment to the Needham Housing Authority, and the big picture view of the mission, not just turning the crank on a day-to-day basis, is just, I don't think we could ever replace it with anybody else. I'm terrified of Cheryl being in the position that she is in here, and I'm just going to be very candid, which is ever since I've been here, every single executive director works 2 or 3 years and then they get raided by another housing authority for more money. And the money, we were talking about the wages for maintenance people, well, the wages for executive directors, while certainly a lot higher, relatively speaking, are still by the standards of what you have to have to afford housing in Needham, doesn't get you there. And so my very largest concern, not to again say that we don't need to improve what we do on this program and figure it out, but based on the performance of the last 20 months, and then particularly based on the need for continuity and commitment, and I don't want her to burn the midnight oil 24 hours a day any more than anybody else does, but I'm worried about burnout as well. But what I'm most worried about is that if we just do a 1-year contract and we don't take advantage of the maximum salary cap, that notwithstanding her lifetime support of the Needham Housing Authority, I mean, some some other housing authorities is gonna make her an offer at some point that she can't refuse. And I just don't think it's right to put her in that position of having, and, you know, we are really have our hands tied for the time being on what we can do by way of salary. But what we can do is, you know, vote for the maximum amount of salary. And what we can do is also, you know, go to 3 years instead of 1 year, so she has some job security there. So I would favor very strongly, in the best interest of the housing authority, that we do adopt a motion to submit a 3-year employment contract renewal, and also, you know, submit it with the maximum salary amount that you got in your board packet there. Anybody want to add more comments?
I'll add.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, going back to Ed's statement, I just want to say that I know for a fact that Cheryl has been doing catch-up work, going back as far as Paul Dumichel and Patricia Edmonds. And I can't see a way that she could ask or delegate a responsibility like that to somebody who didn't know Patricia or Paul. I think it would be almost impossible to delegate that type of a task. And so she's been doing a lot of catch-up work. She works probably some 7 days a week. I think she puts her time in, and I think she's doing a hell of a job. I really do. I can't say anything other than that. I mean, she meets her deadlines. So I'm going to go with the high rate and the 3 years.
Any further comments? Go ahead, Penny.
Well, I'd like to emphasize that the suggestion was made by Ed that there be some sort of resource provided to Cheryl that would help her develop a sense of trust among those she works with, so that she will find it easier to delegate. I agree with Janice, you can't delegate all that back work, but there's plenty of other things that I keep hearing complaints about, that their office people just aren't given enough responsibility. They're not being given the kind of work that they're capable of doing. And that's a roadblock, it seems to me. And there may be some way to help Cheryl get a sense of trust among her people.
Well, I have no problem making available additional help or coaching resources, or even personnel. You know, we're down in an executive director, which is obviously part of the problem. Got to have that deputy on board to kind of shoulder part of the load. There's no question about that. Any further comment? What do you think about that, Jim or Janice?
I think, that is a greater part of the problem, is that she doesn't have an assistant. I mean, that's usually where you delegate things. So, yeah, she definitely needs an assistant.
And I'll share, Cheryl and I have talked about that several times, and I've always appreciated her perspective and instinct, right? She recognizes what the challenges are, and I think has a good managerial sense for what's next, and is willing to listen. I don't know if any of my perspective is that helpful, because I'm not in the day-to-day, nor should I be in the day-to-day context, but I trust in her instincts, which is generally to be open to additional resources. Within the reality of having managed and hired people in this market, it's tough, especially given those income limits right now.
I will offer also another thought here that might be appealing. and because I'd love to get a unanimous vote on this for obvious reasons, because it sends the right kind of message, to our new partners, Peabody Properties and AHSC and DHCD and the newer, other people in the state that we need to support this here. So when I was going through the PHN, did everybody have a chance to read it or not? Yeah. We also have the power that we've never used before to propose a bonus system for Cheryl that would go along with this 3-year plan, 3-year contract, such that, how we establish goals at the beginning of every, year. And we did these 20-month goals for this 1-year contract. We will revisit how Cheryl did against those goals in December. But you also can have a bonus as long as the bonus isn't paid with state money. So I'm going to call your attention to page 9 of that memo. It's paragraph 11. Let me just read any bonus paid to the executive director should be listed in the other taxable compensation section. The term bonus refers to additional taxable compensation that's covered, that the covered individual receives during the LHA's fiscal year that is generally a one-time payment for exemplary performance or additional performance above the basic job duties description for a specific activity or program. Bonuses may not be paid from state funds and must comply with any and all rules from the funding sources from which they are paid. Multi-year contracts that include a payment of bonus must specify the amount of the bonus, the sources of the funds from which the bonus will be paid, and the year or years in which it is anticipated to be paid. The contract should also specify any conditions on the payment, such as the continuation of a funding source or the accomplishment of certain goals. So for many years, we've been setting goals, but we've never, as is typical in the private sector, tying a financial bonus to it because we didn't have any money to do that. But nowadays we do. The funds that we just liberated from the from mass housing, which Cheryl was tracked down in our bank account recently, she was telling me here, could be used for that purpose. And what would be the appetite for the commissioners to say her current salary is $104,463. The max that is available under the DHCD guidelines is 108, and 502, and we could maybe establish a bonus of maybe 10% of that amount, or let's say $10,000, just rounding it there, and then starting with 2025, when we set the goals for 2025, we would then also tie a year-end bonus to the performance of those goals. How do we feel about that idea? And I'm going to ask Cheryl what you think about it as well here.
Wow, you really put me on the spot there.
Well, that's why I'm not asking you right now. I'm going to ask the other commissioners what they think, so that you would you'd consider it here. Have a moment to gather your thoughts.
Okay.
Because absent of the issue that Ed raised, which is, I know, a frustration for Ed and Penny. I mean, I think everybody else, everything else that she's been able to support. I mean, we don't want her to work ourselves to death or into an early grave. I totally agree with that. But we're unlikely to find another executive director with the the experience and the qualifications that Cheryl has right now. And I want to have, they call it golden handcuffs a little bit. They want, in the private sector, I want, have something that not only kind of links her to the Needham Housing Authority, but also rewards her for, the kind of performance that we're looking for starting in 2025. And also, so that's something she can look forward to as well, and help make the ends meet at the end of the year. Jim, you're familiar with the use of bonus.
I support that. Yep.
Do you have anything further to say, Jim or Janice, or any?
Sounds like a good idea. If it builds incentive,
Ed or Penny, do you have any comments?
I'd like to see it linked to the suggestion that there be some effort on Cheryl's part or on our part to supply her with someone who will help her develop a stronger sense of trust among her people, including the volunteers.
Well, what we would need, we certainly could do that. It would need to be its own standalone agenda item at our next board meeting, where we talk about that and anything else, and then we need to come to an agreement. And of course, the person on the receiving end, the executive director, also has to buy in mutually to the, to the goals. You can't just have say, go climb Mount Everest without oxygen, obviously I'm making a funny, bad joke, but it's setting bonuses is a setting of goals and mutual agreement between the company, or in our case the NHA, and the leader of that company here, the CEO of that company. So, but yeah, that's a possibility. Cheryl, I didn't mean to spring this on you out of the blue, but I didn't expect Ed's comment either.
Well, I have to say that I am humbled really by this suggestion, extremely humbled. And, thinking about how to be a better person, how to be a better executive director, how to be a better leader among my staff, how to provide greater customer service to our residents, all of that is very important to me. And something that I have to work on. I have to have that that goal in mind. So I'm very humbled by the sentiment, and I'm encouraged by it, quite honestly, very encouraged. And I want to add all along while I'm listening to the conversations that, I say this amongst my peers and even among the staff, that I'm supported by a board who has given me a great deal of support to get the job done. And that means more to me than my mere words can express. It means a great deal to me. And the people that I've been able to reach out to me have been extremely helpful. So I'd like to continue with that. It's very, very, very helpful to me. Cynthia Howe and Jim Pender, our employment attorney, have all been extremely helpful to me in these efforts. And the board has been very, very encouraging. I do tend sometimes to get, a little narrow-minded and do things literally according to the book. And I do need to sort of open my thinking a little and be a little more flexible. But all in all, I'm very humbled by what you're suggesting. Very humbled.
Ed or Penny, do you have anything you want to add to the discussion at this point? I think we're ready to bring this to a vote. I'm going to make a motion that we.
Sorry, I was just on mute. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Right, sorry. Go ahead.
With a condition that Cheryl make efforts to develop her ability to learn to delegate or have confidence to delegate and work toward establishing an esprit de corps among the morale of the office staff or staff. I then can support the effort of 3 years with an increase. And if an effort going forward is not being done, then we're of course we're locked in. But in 3 years, then we can make another judgment.
Well, we're not locked into the bonus if that becomes part of the goals to which the bonus is tied to.
Okay.
So that
I-
gives, I think, addresses your concern, I believe.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to make a motion that we approve the contract of employment with our wonderful executive director, Cheryl Gosman, for a 3-year renewal period with a salary that starts at $108,502 per the DHCD or ELHLC worksheet as the maximum. And substantially in the same form as the contract, the draft that you have in your packet, and to also include a bonus provision in the rider that we are allowed to approve if we pay for it without using state funds, of $10,000 for each year to be subject to an annual goal process similar to what we've had before for several years now, tied to that, the actual payment of that bonus. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Janice. I'm going to call the roll. Hearing no further discussion, hopefully. Reg Foster votes aye.
Jim Flanagan votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny Kirk votes aye.
Dennis Bennett votes aye.
Okay, and we have passes unanimously 5-0. Thank you. We are now at adjournment. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Second. No.
I'll make the,
Motion by Penny and backwards motion by Penny and seconded by Janice. We'll call the roll for adjournment. Reg Foster votes aye.
Jim Flanagan votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny Kirk votes aye.
Dennis Bennett votes aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a nice day.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.